The bullied teen who stood up for a homeless man had no idea his life was about to change forever. Ethan Miller walked with his shoulders hunched, his body a fortress against the world, against the jeers and the pushing that followed him like a shadow through the hallways of Westlake High. The bruise beneath his eye had turned a sickly yellow-green, a watercolor of pain that his mother pretended not to see across the breakfast table each morning. Rain pattered against his hoodie as he took the long way home, avoiding the corner where Marcus and his friends usually waited. The wet concrete reflected the gray November sky, matching the heaviness in his chest. 17 years old, and sometimes Ethan felt like he'd already lived too long in this world that seemed determined to grind him down to nothing. He clutched his backpack tighter, fingers white-knuckled around the strap. Inside was his sketchbook, the only place where he felt like himself, where the lines and shadows obeyed him, where he created worlds no one could touch or taint. His art teacher had called his work remarkable yesterday. The word had nestled in his chest like a small, warm animal, the first kind thing anyone had said to him in weeks. The sound of shouting pulled him from his thoughts. Across the street, 3 boys from his school, seniors, football players with varsity jackets and easy smiles, circled something, someone. Their laughter cut through the rain like glass. "Go back to the dump where you belong." "Hey, trash man, I think you missed some garbage yourself." Ethan slowed, his breath fogging in the cold air. He should keep walking. He knew better than to draw attention to himself. But then he saw who they were tormenting, an elderly man with a weathered face and threadbare coat, clutching a small cart of belongings. The man didn't cower. He stood straight-backed, eyes forward, dignity intact despite the boys kicking at his cart, sending a few of his possessions scattering across the wet pavement. Something inside Ethan, something he thought had been beaten quiet long ago, flared to life. Before he could reconsider, his feet were moving. His heart hammered against his ribs like a wild thing trying to escape. Fear tasted metallic on his tongue. "Hey," his voice cracked, but he forced it louder. "Leave him alone." The boys turned, surprise flashing across their faces before settling into familiar sneers. "Well, look who it is. Miller decided to be a hero today," said the tallest one. "Trevor, captain of the football team." "What's it to you, freak?" Ethan's hands trembled, but he stepped between them and the old man. "Just leave him alone. He's not bothering anyone. Neither were we until you showed up." Trevor moved closer, towering over Ethan. The smell of his expensive cologne mixed with the rain. "You defending your dad or something? You two look like you shop at the same dumpster." Laughter from the others, sharp and cruel. Ethan's face burned. He kept his eyes on Trevor's chin, unable to meet his gaze but unwilling to look down. "I'm not leaving until you do." A tense silence followed, broken only by the sound of rain hitting pavement. Ethan felt the old man standing quietly behind him, felt the weight of the moment stretching like a thread about to snap. Then Trevor's phone buzzed. He checked it and rolled his eyes. "Whatever. This is boring anyway." He shouldered past Ethan, deliberately hard. "See you Monday, Miller. We'll catch up then." The threat hung in the air like smoke as the boys walked away, their laughter echoing off brick buildings. Ethan's knees felt weak. Monday. He'd pay for this on Monday. But for now, his attention turned to the old man, who was already kneeling to gather his scattered belongings. "Here, let me help." Ethan crouched down, picking up a worn book, its pages warped from rain. "I'm sorry about them. Not your burden to apologize for," the man said, his voice surprisingly clear and strong. Up close, Ethan noticed his eyes, a striking blue bright against his weathered skin. They reminded Ethan of the sky in his paintings, the kind of blue that seemed to go on forever. "But thank you for your courage, young man." "It wasn't courage," Ethan mumbled, helping the man secure his items back in the cart. I know what it's like to be their target." The old man studied him, those blue eyes seeing far too much. "My name is Arthur. Arthur Caldwell. Ethan Miller." He held out the book he'd retrieved, a collection of poetry by Robert Frost. Arthur took it with careful hands. "Ah, yes. 2 roads diverged in a wood, and I took the one less traveled by. And that has made all the difference." Ethan finished automatically, then looked away, embarrassed by his eagerness. A smile creased Arthur's face. "A reader, then. And what else are you, Ethan Miller?" The question caught him off guard. What was he? A victim? A nobody? A disappointment? He swallowed. "I draw sometimes. Nothing special. I find that people who say nothing special about their passions are often the most talented." Arthur adjusted his threadbare coat. "Would you walk with an old man a while? These bones don't move as quickly as they once did, and the company would be welcome. Ethan hesitated. Home meant safety, meant hiding in his room with his sketchbooks. But home also meant his mother's tired silence, the empty space where his father should have been, the crushing loneliness of being unseen. "Sure," he said finally. "Where are you headed?" "Maple Street Park. I have a bench there that offers the most remarkable view of the sunset, even on rainy days like this." They walked slowly, Arthur's cart squeaking with each step. The rain had softened to a drizzle, more mist than downpour now. Ethan found himself talking about school, about art, about the landscapes he loved to paint. Arthur listened with genuine interest, asking questions that made Ethan think about his work in new ways. "Color is the language of emotion," Arthur said as they reached the park. "It speaks what words cannot." The park was nearly empty, the weather keeping most people indoors. Arthur led them to a bench overlooking the city, partially sheltered by an old oak tree. He was right. Even through the gray haze, the setting sun painted the horizon in brushstrokes of amber and rose. "Beautiful, isn't it?" Arthur's voice had softened. "I've watched this view for 15 years now. It never repeats itself exactly." Ethan nodded, wishing he had his sketchbook to capture the moment. The way the light caught the raindrops on the leaves, turning them to small universes. "May I see your hands, Ethan?" The strange request pulled him from his thoughts. "My hands?" An old man's curiosity. "Humor me." Hesitantly, Ethan held out his hands. They were nothing special. A bit too big for his wrists, knuckles red from the cold, a smudge of graphite on his right thumb that never quite washed away. Arthur took them in his own, hands that were lined with age but surprisingly strong. He turned them palm up, studying them with those penetrating blue eyes. "Yes," he murmured, "creator's hands. I suspected as much." He released Ethan's hands and reached into his cart, pulling out a small leather-bound book. "I'd like you to have this." "Oh, I couldn't." "Please. An old man has few pleasures left beyond giving gifts where they'll be appreciated." Arthur pressed the book into Ethan's hands. "My address is inside the cover. Perhaps you'll visit sometime and show me those drawings of yours." The book was heavy, expensive, a sketchbook of the highest quality, its pages thick and creamy. Ethan opened the cover and found an address written in elegant script. 1782 Oakwood Drive. "But that's in..." Ethan stopped himself. Oakwood was the wealthiest neighborhood in town. Arthur smiled, the fading sunlight catching in his eyes. "Not all is as it appears, young Ethan. Remember that." He stood with a slight groan. "Now I believe I've kept you long enough. Your mother will worry. She works nights," Ethan said automatically. "She won't be home until morning." Something flickered across Arthur's face. Concern, perhaps. "Then I'm doubly grateful for your company today." He adjusted his cart. "Until we meet again, Ethan Miller." "And we will meet again." Ethan watched Arthur shuffle away, a solitary figure against the darkening sky. He looked down at the sketchbook in his hands, ran his fingers over the supple leather. Inside the cover, beneath the address, was a quote written in the same elegant script. "Kindness, like art, reveals the extraordinary within the ordinary." Monday came with the inevitable reckoning. Trevor and his friends cornered Ethan by the gym, their retribution swift and painful. A split lip, bruised ribs, the familiar taste of blood. The school counselor asked what happened. Ethan gave the same answer he always did. "I fell." But something was different now. In the quiet of his room that evening, Ethan opened Arthur's sketchbook and began to draw. He drew Arthur as he had seen him, not hunched or defeated, but standing tall against the rain, dignity intact. Those remarkable blue eyes filled with wisdom and kindness. Under his pencil, Arthur transformed from homeless man to something more. A guardian, a guide, a keeper of secrets. When he finished, Ethan studied the drawing. It was good, better than good. Something had changed in his art, some new depth or understanding. He carefully tore out the page and set it aside. Tomorrow, he decided, he would visit 1782 Oakwood Drive. The house at 1782 Oakwood Drive was not what Ethan expected. Instead of the mansion he had imagined, he found a modest cottage set back from the road, its garden wild but beautiful, climbing roses and ivy embracing the stone walls. The mailbox simply read Caldwell in faded letters. Clutching his drawing, Ethan approached the front door. His bruised face throbbed with each heartbeat. Doubt crept in. What was he doing here? What if Arthur had given him a fake address? What if this was just another cruel joke? Before he could retreat, the door opened. A woman in her 50s stood there, her salt and pepper hair pulled back in a neat bun, kind eyes assessing him. "Can I help you?" she asked. I'm looking for Arthur Caldwell, Ethan said, his voice smaller than he intended. He gave me this address. The woman's expression shifted, surprise, then curiosity. Arthur sent you. May I ask your name? Ethan Miller. Her eyes widened slightly. Ethan Miller. Yes, please come in. She stepped aside. I'm Margaret Walsh, Mr. Caldwell's attorney. Attorney? Ethan followed her into a home that felt both modest and elegant. Bookshelves lining the walls, comfortable furniture, paintings that even his untrained eye recognized as valuable. This wasn't a homeless man's residence. Is Arthur here? He asked, confusion mounting. Margaret led him to a study filled with more books, photographs, and artifacts that spoke of a well-traveled life. Please, sit down. There's something I need to explain. Ethan perched on the edge of an armchair, the drawing clutched in his hand like a shield. Arthur Caldwell was one of the wealthiest men in this city. Margaret began, her voice gentle. He made his fortune in real estate and investments, but his passion was always art. He was also a deeply private man who believed that true character could only be observed when people didn't know they were being watched. Ethan's mind raced to keep up. Margaret's eyes softened. Arthur passed away 3 days ago, Ethan, peacefully in his sleep. The room seemed to tilt. 3 days ago, the day after he had met Arthur in the rain. That's not possible, Ethan whispered. I just met him. We talked. He gave me this sketchbook. He pulled the leather-bound book from his backpack. Margaret took it, her fingers tracing the cover. Yes, this was his. He carried it everywhere. She opened it, finding the inscription. A smile touched her lips. That sounds like him. I don't understand, Ethan said, his voice unsteady. If he was so wealthy, why was he pushing a cart through the rain? Margaret finished. Arthur had an unusual method of philanthropy. Several times a year, he would dress as a homeless person and live on the streets for days at a time. He said it kept him humble, reminded him of what really mattered. But more importantly, it allowed him to find people. People with true kindness. People who would help someone who could offer nothing in return. She studied Ethan's bruised face. People like you who would stand up for a stranger despite the cost to themselves. Ethan's cheeks burned. Anyone would have done the same. No, Ethan, they wouldn't. Arthur witnessed hundreds of people walk by without a glance. He saw those boys harassing him, and no one intervened. No one except you. She leaned forward. Arthur changed his will the night after he met you. He came here, called me over, and added a codicil. From her briefcase, she withdrew a document and handed it to Ethan. His eyes caught phrases that made no sense. Bequeathed to Ethan Miller. Trust to be established. Education fund. Ownership of the Caldwell Gallery. Remaining fortune upon reaching age 25. The numbers blurred before his eyes. Millions. Tens of millions. This can't be real, he whispered. It's very real, Margaret assured him. Arthur was an excellent judge of character. He said he saw something in you, a rare combination of talent and compassion. He believed you would use his resources wisely. Ethan looked down at the drawing in his hand. Arthur, as he had seen him, dignified and kind despite his apparent circumstances. He handed it to Margaret. I drew this last night. She took it, her breath catching. This is remarkable. You've captured him perfectly. Her fingers traced the lines of Arthur's face. He would have loved this. I still don't understand why me, Ethan said, his voice breaking. He didn't even know me. Arthur believed that a single moment of genuine kindness revealed more about a person than a lifetime of constructed interactions. She set the drawing down carefully. The inheritance comes with conditions, of course. You'll finish school, attend college for art if you choose. The trust will provide for your education and basic needs, with the bulk of the fortune transferred when you're 25. And my mom? Provisions have been made for her as well. Arthur was very thorough. Margaret smiled gently. There's more. The small cottage on the property is vacant. Arthur suggested you and your mother might consider moving there. It would be rent-free, of course. Ethan's mind spun with possibilities. No more tiny apartment with thin walls. No more working nights for his mother. No more hiding his art because there wasn't money for supplies. There's one more thing. Margaret handed him an envelope. Arthur left this for whoever earned his bequest. I believe it's meant for you. The envelope was heavy, cream-colored, sealed with wax. Ethan broke the seal and pulled out a letter written in the same elegant script as the inscription in the sketchbook. To the keeper of my legacy, it began. If you are reading this, then you have shown kindness when there was nothing to gain. You have defended dignity when others sought to destroy it. For that alone, you deserve everything I can give you. But wealth without purpose is a prison, not a gift. I have spent my life learning this truth. Money creates comfort, but meaning creates joy. My fortune is now yours to steward, not merely to possess. I ask only this: remember the person you were in that moment of kindness. That is your true self, beyond fear, beyond doubt. That is who you are meant to be. And when the time comes, find your own successor, someone who shows kindness without expectation, courage without recognition. The true inheritance I leave you is not in bank accounts or property deeds, but in this tradition of seeing the extraordinary in the ordinary. With faith in your journey, Arthur Caldwell. Ethan folded the letter, his hands trembling. Outside the window, rain had begun to fall again, soft and steady against the glass. He thought of Arthur on that bench, watching sunsets that never repeated themselves exactly. He thought of creators' hands and roads less traveled, and kindness revealing the extraordinary within the ordinary. "I'd like to see the cottage," he said finally, "and I'd like to know more about the gallery." Margaret's smile was warm. "Of course. Arthur said you'd say that." 3 years passed like the turning of pages in a beloved book, sometimes lingering on significant moments, sometimes rushing forward with the momentum of change. Ethan and his mother moved into the cottage that spring. She cried when she saw it, not just because of its beauty, but because for the first time in years she could breathe. The weight of constant worry lifted from her shoulders. She reduced her nursing shifts to part-time and returned to school to become the nurse practitioner she'd always dreamed of being. Ethan finished high school with a new confidence that had nothing to do with his unexpected inheritance and everything to do with finding his voice. The bullying stopped, not because of his newfound wealth, which he kept private, but because standing up for Arthur had unlocked something in him that couldn't be reburied. He stood taller now, met eyes directly, spoke with quiet certainty. The Caldwell Gallery became his second home. Small but prestigious, it had been Arthur's passion project for decades. Under Ethan's direction and with guidance from the board Arthur had assembled, it shifted its focus to showcasing young, undiscovered artists alongside established names. Ethan's own work, large emotional landscapes that captured light in ways that made viewers catch their breath, hung in a small back room. He wasn't ready for more than that yet. On quiet evenings, Ethan often found himself on Arthur's bench in Maple Street Park, sketchbook open, watching sunsets that never repeated themselves exactly. Sometimes he imagined Arthur sitting beside him, those remarkable blue eyes seeing far too much. "I'm trying," he would whisper to the empty space. "I'm trying to be worthy of this." And he was. The trust Margaret managed allowed him to create a scholarship fund for art students from disadvantaged backgrounds. He established a community art space in his old neighborhood where kids could create without judgment or cost. He volunteered at homeless shelters, teaching art classes and listening to stories from people the world had decided to ignore. On a golden afternoon in his first year at the State University's prestigious art program, Ethan was rushing across campus when he noticed a girl sitting alone on a bench, hunched over a sketchbook, her face streaked with tears. Students flowed around her like water around a stone. No one stopping, no one seeing. Ethan slowed, then stopped. He should get to class. He was already late. But something inside him, something that had been awakened that rainy day 3 years ago, wouldn't let him walk past. "Hey," he said softly, approaching the bench. "Are you okay?" The girl looked up, startled, quickly wiping her face. "I'm fine," she said automatically. It's nothing." Ethan recognized the lie. He told it often enough himself. "I'm Ethan," he said, sitting down at the far end of the bench, giving her space. "And sometimes nothing feels like everything." She stared at him, wary, then something in her posture softened. "Maya," she offered, and ... "Yeah, want to talk about it? Or not talk about it? I'm good either way." A hesitant smile touched her lips. "My portfolio review was today. Professor Harmon said I should consider changing majors. That I lack technical precision and emotional depth." Her voice broke on the last words. "Can I see?" Ethan asked gently. "I mean, only if you want to show me." After a moment's hesitation, Maya handed over her sketchbook. Ethan turned the pages slowly, taking in her work. Bold, expressive portraits that captured something essential about their subjects. Her technique had rough edges, certainly, but there was raw talent and genuine emotion in every line. "Professor Harmon," Ethan said carefully, "is known for his photorealistic still lifes. Perfect technique, zero soul." He handed the sketchbook back. "He's looking for himself in your work and not finding it. That's not your failure, it's his limitation. Maya stared at him. How do you know that? Because someone once taught me that true art, like true kindness, reveals the extraordinary within the ordinary. Ethan smiled. And your work does that. It just needs time and the right guidance to mature. They talked until the sun began to set, casting the campus in golden light. Ethan learned that Maya was a first-generation college student, working 2 jobs to stay enrolled. Her passion was portrait art that captured people at their most authentic moments. Her dream was to create work that made people feel seen. As they parted ways, Ethan made a decision. The next day, he spoke with the board at the Caldwell Gallery about creating an internship position. The day after, he left a note in Maya's department mailbox, inviting her to apply. 6 months later, Maya's first exhibition in the small back room of the Caldwell Gallery opened to enthusiastic reviews. Her portraits, including one of Ethan sitting on Arthur's bench, his face turned toward a sunset, captured something essential about human resilience and connection. At the opening, as guests mingled and champagne flowed, Ethan slipped outside for a moment of quiet. The night air was cool against his face. Above him, stars punctured the darkness like tiny promises. "I think I understand now," he said softly to the night. "It was never about the money, was it, Arthur? It was about the chain of kindness, how one act connects to another and another." From his pocket, he withdrew the small leather-bound sketchbook Arthur had given him that rainy day. Its pages were filled now with drawings, ideas, dreams, plans. On the last page, he had written his own inscription: "To see the extraordinary within the ordinary, this is the artist's task. To reveal it through kindness, this is the human calling." Inside the gallery, Maya was explaining her work to an attentive group, her face animated, confident. Watching her, Ethan felt a warmth that had nothing to do with wealth and everything to do with purpose. The bullied teen who had stood up for a homeless man had found more than an inheritance. He had found his way forward, not just through the fortune he'd received, but through the lesson behind it, that the most valuable legacy is not what we accumulate, but what we give away. That true wealth lies in those moments when we choose kindness despite our fear, when we see worth in those the world has deemed worthless. That sometimes the greatest act of courage is simply to stop, to see, to stand between cruelty and its target, and by doing so, to change not just one life, but many in ways we could never foresee. As Ethan turned to rejoin the exhibition, he imagined he saw Arthur's reflection in the gallery window. Not as the homeless man from that rainy day, but as he truly was, a guardian, a guide, a keeper of secrets, smiling with those remarkable blue eyes that seemed to go on forever. "Thank you," Ethan whispered, and somewhere in the tapestry of stars and stories and lives intertwined through acts of unexpected kindness, he felt certain Arthur heard him.